Imagine you're enjoying a quiet lunch when a tiny voice whispers the most chilling words you've ever heard, "Call 911, now." That's exactly what happened to NBA legend Shaquille O'Neal at a crowded McDonald's. What started as an ordinary meal turned into a race to stop a kidnapping, right in front of dozens of unsuspecting customers. Stay tuned, because this true story will leave you speechless. The golden arches outside glowed like a beacon in the late afternoon sun as families streamed into the McDonald's for their weekend treat. The air inside buzzed with the cheerful chaos of a Saturday crowd, children squealing over Happy Meal toys, the rhythmic hiss of the fryers, and the occasional ding of the order bell. The smell of salty fries and warm apple pies drifted through the dining area, wrapping everything in a cozy, familiar aroma. At a quiet corner booth sat a man who needed no introduction to most people, though today he looked like he wanted nothing more than a peaceful meal. Shaquille Big Shaq, known worldwide for his towering presence and equally huge personality, was dressed casually in a plain black t-shirt and athletic pants. Despite his fame, he carried himself with an easy calm that made him blend in, or at least as much as someone 7 feet tall possibly could. He had just unwrapped his burger, a mountain of fries on the tray, and was savoring the rare chance to enjoy a simple lunch without fanfare. As Shaq reached for a fry, a faint sound sliced through the comfortable background noise. "Please, help me." He paused mid-motion, the single fry hovering inches from his mouth. It wasn't the playful cry of a child begging for extra ketchup. It was soft, almost a breath, but heavy with something that made the hairs on his arms stand straight up. Shaq slowly turned his head, scanning the bustling dining room. Kids giggled over milkshakes, parents chatted while balancing trays, but no one seemed to be looking his way. Then he felt it, a gentle tug at the edge of his sleeve. Standing right beside the booth was a little boy, no more than 5 years old. His blonde hair was slightly messy, his tiny fists clenched at his sides. But it was his eyes that stopped Shaq cold, wide, unblinking, and filled with a fear far too grown up for someone so small. Shaq set the fry down and leaned closer, lowering his deep voice to a soothing rumble. "Hey there, buddy. You lost?" The boy didn't answer. Instead, he climbed onto the seat with surprising speed, scrambling into the booth until he was pressed against Shaq's enormous frame. Before Shaq could even process what was happening, the child wrapped his arms around the big man's neck in a desperate, clinging hug. His tiny body trembled like a leaf caught in a sudden storm. The restaurant noises seemed to fade into a dull hum. Shaq felt the boy's quick, panicked breaths against his chest. He placed one massive hand gently on the child's back, careful not to startle him. "It's okay, little man. You're safe. What's going on?" The child pressed his face closer, his voice barely a whisper but laced with urgency. "I need you to call 911. Now." Shaq's heart skipped a beat. The words were clear, unmistakable. Not a game. Not a random phrase a child might repeat. It was a plea, serious, fearful, and deliberate. He instinctively scanned the room again, eyes sharp despite the soft, welcoming decor of the restaurant. The cheerful chatter and bright yellow walls suddenly felt like a thin cover for something much darker. Whoever or whatever had driven this boy to approach a complete stranger, and not just any stranger, but the biggest man in the room, had to be close. The boy's grip tightened, as if he sensed that danger could burst through the door at any second. Shaq leaned slightly, keeping his voice steady. "All right, champ. You stay right here with me, okay? You're safe." The child gave the faintest nod, still trembling but holding on tight. In that moment, Shaq understood something he'd never forget. Sometimes, a whisper can be louder than a scream. And this whisper was about to change everything. Shaq's pulse quickened as the child's whisper echoed in his mind. "I need you to call 911. Now." This wasn't the playful panic of a child who'd lost sight of a parent for a few seconds. The boy's voice carried a weight that chilled the air around them. "Hey, little man," Shaq said softly, bending closer so his deep voice didn't carry across the restaurant. "Take a slow breath. You're okay with me. Can you tell me your name?" The boy's small fingers clutched the fabric of Shaq's t-shirt, knuckles white. He shook his head, lips pressed tight, eyes flicking toward the entrance. He wasn't ready to share even a name. "It's all right," Shaq continued in a steady, almost whispering tone. "You don't have to say much. I just need to know, are you hurt? Are you looking for your mom or dad?" The boy swallowed hard, then gave the smallest shake of his head. His eyes darted again, this time Shaq followed his gaze. Near the glass doors, a man in a black leather jacket lingered. He pretended to study the overhead menu, but his body language told a different story. He wasn't waiting for food. He was watching. Pacing slowly, he peered inside with quick, darting glances, scanning every table. When his eyes swept across Shaq's booth, he stiffened, just for a split second, before pretending to check his phone. Shaq felt a prickle at the back of his neck. Years of basketball had given him more than height and strength, they'd trained his instincts. And every instinct screamed that this man was the reason the boy was terrified. The child whispered again, barely audible against the buzz of conversation and the hiss of the fryers. "Don't let him take me. Please." Shaq's jaw tightened. He kept his own movements calm, but his mind raced. "This is serious. I can't scare the kid. I can't tip off the guy." He rested one massive hand lightly on the boy's back. "You're safe with me, champ," he said quietly. "Nobody's going to touch you. I promise." Shaq's eyes flicked toward the counter. Two teenage employees worked the registers, laughing with a customer, completely unaware. A group of teenagers in a booth nearby were absorbed in their phones. No one else seemed to notice the man by the door or the tension gathering like a storm. "Listen," Shaq murmured, leaning so close the boy could feel the rumble of his voice. "I'm going to help you. But I need to know, do you see that man in the black jacket? Is that who you're scared of?" The boy's tiny head bobbed once in a trembling nod. His grip tightened, his small frame trembling against Shaq's chest. Shaq exhaled slowly. "All right. We'll handle this together. You don't have to talk anymore if you don't want to. I've got you." Without breaking eye contact with the suspicious figure, Shaq slid his phone from his pocket under the table. He kept it low, his enormous hands shielding the screen as he tapped out the emergency number. The man in the jacket shifted closer to the doorway, peering inside again. Shaq noticed how the man's eyes narrowed, scanning each booth more deliberately this time. The stranger's body tensed as if preparing to move. Shaq felt the boy flinch and whispered calmly, "It's okay. Stay still. You're safe." He could hear the child's quick breaths against his chest, feel the pounding of a tiny heart. Shaq's own heart thudded harder, but his voice remained steady. He wasn't just a basketball legend right now, he was the only wall between this child and potential danger. In that moment, the restaurant's cheerful buzz seemed to fade into silence. Every sound sharpened, the hum of the air conditioning, the distant beeping of a fryer, the soft click as Shaq's thumb hovered over the phone's call button. He knew what he had to do. Shaq's thumb pressed the green button, and the phone barely rang once before a calm voice answered. 911, what's your emergency?" He kept his voice low but firm, every word deliberate. "This is Shaquille O'Neal. I'm at the McDonald's on Main and 5th Street. I have a young boy with me who says someone is trying to kidnap him. We need police here immediately." The dispatcher didn't waste a second. "Understood, sir. Are you in the child safe right now?" Shaq's eyes never left the man in the black leather jacket. "For the moment. But the suspect is inside the restaurant and may try to leave. He's wearing a black jacket, dark jeans, about 6 feet tall. He's pacing near the entrance, acting suspicious." "Copy that," the dispatcher replied. "Stay on the line. Officers are less than 3 minutes away. Do not confront the suspect. Keep the child with you." Shaq shifted slightly, his enormous frame creating a protective wall around the boy. He lowered the phone so it was hidden behind his arm. "You hear that, buddy?" he whispered to the child pressed against his chest. "Help is coming. You're safe with me." The boy nodded faintly but didn't let go. Shaq could feel the child's tiny heart thumping like a drum, a rapid rhythm of pure fear. Across the restaurant, the man in the jacket stepped fully inside. He pretended to glance at the menu overhead, but his eyes kept flicking toward the corner booth. The tension in the air thickened like storm clouds. Shaq's years on the basketball court had taught him how to read an opponent, and everything about this man screamed danger: the restless shifting of his feet, the quick glances, the way his jaw clenched each time he scanned the room. The dispatcher's voice came through Shaq's earpiece again. "Sir, can you confirm the boy is not injured?" Shaq lowered his head slightly, whispering into the phone while keeping his eyes locked on the stranger. "No visible injuries. He's scared, holding on to me. Says the man in black is not his father." "Good," the dispatcher said calmly. "Officers are 1 minute out. Keep the child calm. If the suspect approaches, do not engage physically unless you must protect the child." Shaq's free hand rested gently on the boy's back. "Just breathe, champ. You're safe," he murmured. He could feel the boy's grip tighten every time the man in the jacket took a step closer. The restaurant's normal clatter suddenly felt deafening: the sizzle of fries, the chatter of customers, the squeak of sneakers on the tile floor. Yet around Shaq and the boy there seemed to be a quiet bubble, as if the world had narrowed to 3 beating hearts: his own, the boy's, and the man's. The stranger finally moved closer to the counter, pretending to study the menu board. His eyes, though, betrayed him. They darted toward the corner booth, then to the exit, then back again. He knew something wasn't right. Maybe he'd sensed the call. Maybe he just felt Shaq's unwavering gaze. The dispatcher's voice steadied Shaq's nerves. "Units are pulling in now. Can you see the front windows?" "Yes," Shaq said softly. He spotted the faint flash of red and blue lights reflecting off the glass door. Relief flooded through him, but he kept his posture calm and unthreatening. He didn't want to spook the suspect into doing something reckless. "Officers are entering," the dispatcher confirmed. Shaq ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket in one smooth motion. He bent closer to the boy and whispered, "You did great. Help's here." The child finally loosened his grip, just enough to peek over Shaq's broad arm toward the door. His wide eyes caught the sight of 2 uniformed police officers stepping inside, scanning the room with focused precision. Shaq gave a barely perceptible nod toward the entrance, signaling them without words. The next few seconds would decide everything. The front door chimed as a gust of warm air swirled in from the parking lot. The man in the black leather jacket froze for the briefest moment, eyes narrowing as he noticed the 2 uniformed officers stepping inside. Their entrance was quiet but commanding, the kind that made the entire restaurant instinctively glance up. Still, the man didn't retreat. Instead, he adjusted his jacket, forced a casual posture, and began strolling toward the corner booth where Shaq sat with the boy. Shaq felt the child tense against him, a small tremor running through the boy's shoulders. Shaq whispered, "Stay right here, champ," his deep voice a steady anchor amid the rising tension. He shifted slightly, his massive frame creating an even stronger barrier between the child and the approaching stranger. The man stopped a few feet away, his forced smile not reaching his eyes. "Hey, buddy," he said, addressing the boy but staring directly at Shaq. "That's my nephew. Thanks for watching him. We should get going now." Shaq didn't move. His calm, even tone carried unmistakable authority. "If that's true," he said, "then you can explain it to the police officers who just walked in." The man's smile faltered. "There's no need for that," he said quickly, taking half a step closer. "It's a misunderstanding. Come on, kid, let's go." Shaq's gaze hardened. He leaned forward slightly, his broad shoulders blocking the booth's edge like a fortress. "Back up," he said, his voice low but powerful, deep enough to carry across the room without a shout. The single command made several customers turn their heads, sensing that something serious was happening. For a tense heartbeat, no one moved. The hum of the fryer and the chatter of diners seemed to vanish. The man's eyes flicked toward the door, then back to Shaq, measuring his chances. He might have been tall compared to most, but next to Shaq's towering presence he looked small, almost fragile. One of the officers, reading the scene instantly, approached with deliberate calm. "Sir," she said firmly, "step away from the table, please." The man raised his hands slightly. "This is just a family thing," he insisted, but his voice cracked. "I'm his uncle." "Then you won't mind showing ID and waiting while we confirm that," the officer replied, positioning herself between the man and the booth. Her partner circled subtly to block the exit. The boy peeked out from behind Shaq's arm, his small voice trembling but clear enough for everyone to hear. "He's not my uncle." The entire restaurant seemed to exhale at once. Gasps and murmurs spread through the customers as the officer's eyes sharpened. "You heard the child," she said. "Step back now." The man's bravado crumbled. He glanced around as if searching for an escape, but the second officer was already there, hand hovering near his holster. The stranger's shoulders slumped. Okay, he muttered, backing away. Shaq remained perfectly still, his eyes locked on the man until the officers secured him. Only then did he lower his guard slightly, resting a reassuring hand on the boy's back. "You're safe now," he whispered. The officers quickly moved in, cuffing the suspect with practiced efficiency. One read him his rights while the other radioed for backup. The man offered a half-hearted protest, but it was drowned out by the quiet applause of a few onlookers who now understood what had almost happened. Shaq exhaled, the tension in his massive shoulders finally easing. He gave the boy a gentle smile. "You were brave," he said softly. "You did exactly what you needed to do." The child's grip loosened just a little, but he stayed close, still seeking the comfort of the giant who had protected him. Around them, the restaurant slowly returned to life, the fryers hissed, conversations resumed, but the memory of that standoff lingered, a silent reminder of how quickly an ordinary lunch could turn into a battle of courage. As the man in the black jacket was escorted out in handcuffs, a hush settled over the restaurant. For a moment the only sounds were the distant wail of approaching sirens and the quiet sobs of relief from the little boy pressed against Shaq's chest. Diners who had been frozen in shock began to murmur, their faces a mix of disbelief and gratitude. Shaq finally allowed himself a deep breath. He looked down at the child, whose frightened eyes now shimmered with a cautious calm. "It's over, champ," Shaq said gently. "You're safe." The boy nodded, still gripping Shaq's shirt but no longer trembling. Within minutes, a woman burst through the doors, her own cry breaking the silence. "Ethan," she gasped. The boy's head snapped up. "Mom." He leapt from the booth and into her arms. She dropped to her knees, hugging him so tightly it was as if she could never let go. Tears streamed down her face as she repeated, thank you," over and over. One of the officers approached Shaq and gave a respectful nod. "We received a missing child report this morning," the officer explained. "The suspect matches the description. Your quick call probably saved this kid's life." Shaq offered a modest shrug, his deep voice calm but sincere. "Any decent person would have done the same. You never ignore a kid asking for help." The mother turned to him, still holding Ethan close. "But you did listen," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "You protected him when no one else noticed. I can never repay you." Word of the incident spread quickly. Customers pulled out phones, sharing the unbelievable story on social media. By evening, photos of Shaq sitting calmly with the boy, and the suspect in handcuffs, were everywhere. News outlets picked up the story, calling Shaquille O'Neal a real-life hero. But to Shaq, it wasn't about headlines or praise. As flashing lights faded outside and the crowd slowly returned to their meals, he simply offered a reassuring smile to Ethan and his mother. "You two just enjoy the rest of your day," he said quietly. "That's all that matters." And with that, Big Shaq, giant on the court and even bigger in heart, finished his cold fries, proving that sometimes the greatest victories happen far from the spotlight. And that's how one small whisper turned a normal afternoon into a life-saving moment. If Big Shaq hadn't trusted his instincts, a child might have disappeared forever. What would you do in a situation like this? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if this story inspired you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss another powerful real-life story.